Hi, everybody. So, thank you for joining me on doing some basic astrology. You know, the four essential dignities in traditional astrology is interesting to me because it's showing me the balance of opposites. And so, oftentimes, our human nature wants things to feel cozy and strong and in alignment. And yet, our soul has made pre agreements, I believe, to expand our consciousness by giving us oppositions or having some of our natal planets in what is called detriment, or if a planet is falling. So it's interesting, right? Like on a soul level, to what does it take to actually get yourself to expand? And so looking at the essential dignities now in domicile, this is just learning the rulership for each of the planets. Where does that planet rule? And then when you look at its equal opposite across the wheel, that's where we can see it's in detriment. So domicile and detriment. Where is a planet at home? And where is it absolutely not at home, furthest away from home? And then exaltation is giving like a celebratory kind of status outside of the home. And yet a planet will fall when it's going to learn through the greatest challenge of falling off the cliff, so to speak, energetically and metaphorically. So when we talk about domicile, that word meaning feeling at home, loving it there, this is where the energy finds its ease and grace and it shines through. So when we look at the sun, the planet, the sun, or the star named the sun, the two luminaries, the sun shines brightly. It is at home in Leo. But when we look at its detriment, you know, the ground is not working so well. The house is falling apart. So a sun in Aquarius is at its detriment. I'll show you this next slide where I put this red oval circle around all those aspects of what's in detriment. So the sun in Aquarius, the moon in Capricorn. So the light of the moon doesn't do so well. It would prefer to reflect and be more receptive than it would be in the Capricornian energy of let's go out and make things happen in the world. So here's the list with Mercury will be in detriment in both Sagittarius and Pisces because it's ruled by both Gemini and Virgo. Venus is the ruler of Taurus and Libra, but Venus will be in detriment in Aries and Scorpio. Mars is at home in Aries and the ancient ruler of Scorpio. So Mars, the planet, will feel very well if you have a natal Mars in Aries or Scorpio. They are both in domicile. The detriment would be the opposite of Aries is Libra, and the opposite of Scorpio is Taurus. So one would say if your Mars is in Taurus or Libra, it is in detriment. So it is challenging, but not as destabilizing, let's say, as Mars falling in Cancer. All right, so this is more like the obstacle course, and this is about a more extreme obstacle course where that energy really needs to shore up and understand how would Mars work in Cancer. It's by levels of degree, okay? So Jupiter rules both Sagittarius and Pisces, but it becomes in detriment. Jupiter is in detriment if you find in your natal chart your Jupiter is in Gemini or Virgo. In Saturn, it rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. But Saturn in Cancer or Leo is in detriment. Uranus is at home in Aquarius, but Uranus would be in detriment in Leo. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you. And let's go ahead and get our paints out, and perhaps taking this information and then bringing it into some type of visual will help it go deeper. But this whole chart is one, if you want to study astrology, this is a really good place to begin after you understand what the sun sign is, where its rulership is, where it falls into detriment, where the sun is exalted in Aries, and then where the sun would fall in the opposite of Aries in Libra. Okay, so it's almost like learning the rules of a game. And yeah, these are the various ways the energy aligns. So again, if it's at home, it's doing well, it's feeling good. That planet will shine well when it is in domicile or in its sign of rulership. But it will be challenged in detriment. It will be exalted or praised outside of its home in another sign, but it will fall. So the falls are the real tough challenges. But it is good to know what is detriment. Okay, let's go have some fun painting. Here is one of the many wheels that I have painted and scribbled notes for myself in anticipation of one day teaching and sharing these thoughts with you. Um, by now, you probably understand when we create the horizon line, we start with the planets moving, we start with the zodiacal houses moving this way. Okay, so we have Aries, Taurus, Libra, and Cancer, 4 in the personal houses. And then we have Leo, Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio, these 4 being in the interpersonal houses. And then we have Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces in the interpersonal houses. All right, so I'm going to go get my Inktense colored pencil. So do you remember where the sun, let's just start with the sun, where does it feel strongest? Which house and which sign does the sun feel strongest? And so we'll go ahead and put a little sun glyph here. It lights up in the house, the 5th house of Leo, all right? But it falls on its equal and opposite. Okay, so it's going to fall or be in detriment. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and I'll put a red. If it's in detriment, let's just say it really feels like it's out of sorts. So if the ruler or the domicile for the sun is here in Leo, the equal and opposite is Aquarius. So this is where the sun is in detriment, and the red will mean detriment. Okay, so a domicile sun in Leo would have natural self-expression, confidence, creativity, vitality, and leadership. But you put it in Aquarius energy, and this is the house. Aquarian is the network, the friendship group, the associations. So the singular gets lost in the group. So it's in detriment because you think, how can the sun light up and find the balance between personal recognition and getting lost in the group? All right, so we'd say in Aquarius, the sun is in detriment. All right, so next we figure out, do you remember? Remember we did our little fingers? The sun and the moon, the 2 luminaries. So the moon is at home or in rulership here in Cancer. This is the emotional reflective, beautiful nature of Cancer. So here, the question is, I feel like I'm at home, nurturance. I like to stay home and think about my ancestors. I'm rooted, very well rooted. But the equal and opposite is out here, out in the world of Capricorn. So I'm going to put a red moon here. The moon is in detriment in Capricorn. Okay. It's the equal and opposite. I just want to stay home, but a natal moon in Capricorn will feel like, okay, I'm being challenged to be more vulnerable out in the world. There will be an emotional, I just want to stay home, but I'm being forced outside. Okay, so this is, if your moon is here in Capricorn, if your sun is here in Aquarius, if you have both of these, how you shine in the world and how you feel emotionally will have an interesting, you think it's other people, but it's perhaps within your soul's agreement in your astrology chart. We always look at the natal moment. So after the sun and the moon are in detriment here in these two signs, the next one we have is Mercury. Okay, so I'm going to shift over to my other colored pencil. So where does Mercury feel at home? Well, remember, Mercury feels at home. First of all, I know that Mercury feels at home here in Virgo because I'm a double Virgo. So Mercury feels at home in Virgo. But Mercury also is the ruler of Gemini. So here we go. We're going to put Mercury here in Gemini. Let's talk about everything. Let's learn through sharing and speaking my mind. So in this case, the opposite or the detriment of Mercury, where would Mercury feel in detriment? Mercury would feel in detriment in the opposite signs of Pisces. Go ahead and put Pisces here. So if your natal Mercury is in Pisces, how has it shown up for you? Were you slow to speak? Were there challenges for understanding who you are and how to communicate? So the opposite of Gemini is Sagittarius. So let's see, let's put the next detriment is Mercury in Sagittarius. Here we go. Okay, so Mercury is in detriment in Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is all about, going out and long distance travel. And sometimes Mercury might get overwhelmed by, this out and about, this broader vision. Mercury wants to communicate details of Gemini, but how can you, feels more like a trivia and daily what's going on. And you put me out here like on a rocket ship and I'm traveling around. How do I get details when everything's so immense? And so I'm going from air into fire of the sun into air. How does that feel? And then the moon leaving water and moving into earth. So these are, again, the red are in detriment. These are rulership. Okay, so the next one then is Venus. And you remember, Venus is the ruler of two signs. Here's her glyph. Venus rules Taurus. And here we go. Here's Venus. Beautiful Venus ruling Taurus and Libra. So she feels at home. This feels comfortable. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about money, what I have, who I contract with on a divine other moment or a lifetime. Okay. So the opposite, Venus, the marriage contract, this is the we are. So she is in detriment when she goes across and she finds herself in Aries. Okay, so this is true natally or in a transit. When Venus goes into Aries, she's not talking we anymore. She's talking about, oh, all Mars wants to do, who rules Aries, is assert and have it one way. She likes to really think about both. And now the opposite of Taurus is Scorpio. So here love is beautiful. It's you have the boundaries, it's the picket fence. But when we go across an opposite, Venus is in detriment in Scorpio. This is like really uber intense love. you know? All this passion and conflict and transformation. Venus feels out of her grounding, her earth, when she goes into this very deep water. So, very transformative. All right, next we go to Mars. Now, Mars is at home in the sign of Aries. So, here we're going to put who's home. I guess I have to put this here. Okay, so here's Mars at home in Aries. I assert, I go, I am. But boy, how will Mars feel when it goes into Libra? The I becomes the we, kind of loses himself or itself. Okay, so I'm going to put a red, or this is the detriment, the equal and opposite. Sometimes you can look at this as male, female, male, female. This is the we, this is the me. How do you go from a me relationship into a we? All right, so that's Mars. Next, who do we have? We have Jupiter. This is the god of expansion. Now, Jupiter rules both Sagittarius, which is here. We do Jupiter. Okay, so it feels very much at home. Let's expand. Let's travel, long distance travel. So it's the modern ruler of Sagittarius, but it's also the ancient ruler of Pisces. So let's go ahead and put Jupiter here. So if your Jupiter is in Pisces, you have a very happy Jupiter, or a Jupiter in expanding. Because, what more can you expand than the ocean of all that is? That's uber expansion. I have expanded into the ocean. But in detriment, let's see. So the opposite, what happens to Jupiter when he goes into Virgo? So what is the question with, let's see, here we go. I'm going to get my red. So when Jupiter goes into Virgo, how do I expand when there's such attention to detail? Unless I'm expanding detail. Jupiter has the bigger vision, up from Mount Olympus. Remember, Mercury is the ruler and is at home in Virgo, but Jupiter is in detriment. All right, so the next thing with Jupiter is Sagittarius. So the opposite of Sagittarius is going to be Gemini. Let me see if I can fit that in. So with this one, there's a lot of chatter happening here in the sign of Gemini. And it's like trivia. And so it's hard for, how do you get beyond the talking and the chatter and the constant, look over here, this, the jack of all trades. Expansion seems to Jupiter wants to just really have a broader view. So we would say that Jupiter is in detriment in the sign of both Virgo and Gemini. So what are the challenges? Hard to see a bigger picture, hold a bigger vision when there's that kind of detail and self-analysis. Next, we get to Saturn. All right, where is Saturn at home? Do you remember? It's easy to remember that Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, but there's an ancient placement for Saturn as well. Okay, so Saturn is the modern day ruler of Capricorn, but Saturn, did you know, is also the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So if your Saturn is in Aquarius or in Capricorn, you have a very strong sense of organization, structure, timing, very much step by step. We're going to meet the goal, but it's going to be done very thoughtfully with plans and vision statement. It's not this impulsivity and let's just go. So let me get my red pencil. Where is Saturn in detriment? Well, here we go. We go across. So we put Saturn is in detriment. Going across from Aquarius is Leo. So what does a Saturn in Leo feel like? Well, this house wants to express and create, and Saturn wants structure and authority. And so the challenge of all this personal feeling with how do we get the structure moving? Okay, so I feel good out here working with my networking group, but from my network, and then this is just, see, look at me, this is my performance. So it's trading the, let's say, creative artist for the collective art group. So Saturn is in detriment here in the sign of Leo. But we also said Saturn is the modern day ruler of Capricorn. Out in the world, I build for success. But you bring it into Cancer, where it's in detriment, and Cancer just has all these feelings. It's like, I don't know, I don't want to go outside. I just want to think about our ancestry and, hey, memory lane about my past lives. So we see that Saturn is in detriment in Cancer. But if your moon is in Cancer, it is at home or in domicile. It rules Cancer. Now, the last one we'll do is Uranus. So Uranus is the current day ruler of Aquarius. I'm going to be putting this one here. So there we go. Remember, this is air in this house. This is fixed air. So it's like a satellite sending out information. So the opposite for Uranus would be to be here in Leo. So Leo just wants recognition and it competes for the stage and the spotlight. But here comes Uranus in detriment. It's like, what about the rebellion? What about how we can do things differently? And this is much more about the collective and meeting the individual artist, let's say. Okay, so there we have it. We have our wheel. The black are rulerships, including ancient rulership, and the red are where the planets are in detriment, where there's going to be a challenge. And so there's going to be, how do we bring them together? In other words, we were talking about the sun ruling Leo, but in detriment in Aquarius. So when you bring this axis of Leo Aquarius with these rulers, how can I be authentically free? How can I bring my own personal creativity out into the masses to support the greater good? This is the beauty of astrology, right? And learning these beautiful opposites. Just going to spin this here. Yeah. Venus wanting to feel at home and adored, and makeup and tasty food. And you put her out here in Scorpio, it's like, well, that's harder to sit with. Oh, I almost forgot. I forgot to put in Pluto. So let's complete this. The ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. Okay, so here comes Pluto, modern day ruler. And who else feels at home in Scorpio? Remember the ancient ruler? Well, I'm going to stick him right here, and that's Mars. Okay, here comes Mars. So we've got Mars and Pluto as the rulers of and in domicile with Scorpio. But we have Venus feeling out of sorts. So the equal and opposite is true, that Mars and Pluto would feel in detriment here in Taurus. Let me go ahead and put Pluto in first. It's like the Pluto glyph is like a little person raising its arms up. It's the lord of the underworld. And then here's Mars, the warrior with his arrow. Here we go. There. So balancing opposites. I think I've got everybody because I did Uranus and then Pluto. Good. Go ahead and darken in. So one of the things, if you're brand new to astrology, is to start really learning these glyphs. Do you know this one versus this one? See how this one has a winged helmet? These little wings on top of the head. This is Mercury. This is Venus. This is the sun. That's kind of easy to remember. It looks like a sun. And this looks like a moon. And this is Mercury again. Okay, and here's Venus and Venus. So interesting, right? The pairing of opposites, rulers, rulership, and detriment. Good to sit and reflect on this and take a look at your own natal chart and see where this lands with you. Well, it's always fun to take what we think we know and bring it down into a visual graphic, hand drawing it with colored pencils, with watercolor. That's my way of just telling my brain, okay, do you know the 4 essential dignities? Do you know when is Saturn in detriment? When is Pluto in detriment? So all you have to do is think of where does it rule, and then memorize the equal and opposite sign on the other side of the astrological wheel. Is it fun? I think it is. Because when you start reading charts or looking at your loved ones and seeing wow, it's always been a soul's agreement to come in with a few more challenges or a few more exalted gifts. Rulership and exaltations are in this natal chart. So let's see how it shows up. Things might be a little easier for a reason, whereas others, perhaps souls who've already done many lifetimes, will choose the detriments and the falling planets just to see, hey, how are you going to get out of this one? How are you going to integrate and bring that into unity within yourself? I'll see you next time for some more fun with basic astrology. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.